Three, two, one, go. I think this is the first thing we've done that's had a Miramax logo, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that still a studio today?
I believe it is, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
I
It's
think
been a
it's
long time since I've seen it. I don't know if it's still associated with the Scream series at all.
like everything now. It's probably owned by Disney.
Oh, yeah,
Edward R.
probably.
Pressman. I was reading he passed away last year, which I did not know. Edward R. Pressman. He had a long career. He did the uh, Street Fighter movie with Van Damme.
Yeah,
Other things, Conan the Barbarian is probably what really put him on the map.
the Schwarzenegger one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was reading, interestingly enough, he only signed two actors to a multi-picture deal. One was Arnold Schwarzenegger for the Conan movies, and one was Brandon Lee for the Crow follow-ups. They're the only two actors I was reading he ever signed.
Thomas
To,
Thomas Jane and Thuy Trang sharing a credit screen there.
yeah, there were some interesting casting choices, weren't there? Graham Revel, he did the score for the first one as well.
When Thomas Jane is in like the full get up as I believe his character is called Nemo in the film. He reminds me a lot of the guy from the Benchwarmers. It'll come to me. He was in The Wedding Singer. That weirdo's doing the singing all the time. John Lovitz, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He just so looks like that. Yeah, I like this kind of dusty opening there. It kind of reminds me of like the old kind of chapter play thing, like how the old King Kong movie opened up. Like it's just white text and you've got just this one tone background. Yeah, I caught Goya's name. Hasn't this guy been a bit hit and miss over the years?
Yeah, he's had a long, prolific career. A real sort of comic book movies mainly. He probably he wrote Blade, and I think he directed the third one in that series, and also he had a hand in Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah, and what I think the '95 Mortal Kombat
Yeah, okay.
was one of his, and I think he may have had a hand in the beginning Resident Evil films with
Yeah,
Paul W.S. Anderson. I don't know if he stuck around for what I think there's 7 of those films or 6 of those films.
yeah, it keeps on trucking, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, apparently they're doing an adaptation of Monster Hunter now, and Mila Jovovich is there basically cosplaying as Alice again. So, interesting how this film kind of cut straight to it with just 2 random bodies getting chucked in, and the crow flies over. Like it's not. It's just diving straight headfirst into it, as I think a sequel should, by the way.
Yeah, because the audience, there's an inbuilt expectation now
Yeah.
with a sequel. It's a fascinating film to watch and read about because it, it's tempting to think they deliberately made a bad movie, but no one ever kind of sets out to do that. And they had the right idea with a lot of the elements. The crow, like as in the actual bird flying across, is a big clue to, because they decided really early on, the filmmakers, not to continue Eric's story from the first film. His story is done. They entertained the idea of doing a television adaptation. There was serious consideration to that, which would eventually come true with the series Stairway to Heaven. But what got them really excited was it's going to be an anthology series. Each subsequent film is going to follow a new protagonist. Eric wasn't the first Crow that's ever been, and he was not going to be the last one. So it'll be a new protagonist. They'll be standalone, not direct sequels. Although Sarah's character here, she's from the first film, all grown up.
And not to mention, it kind of gets a little bit overlooked, but that's Gabriel, the same cat from
Oh, really?
the apartment. Yeah, the white cat. She calls it Gabriel.
Yeah, okay.
So it's the same one that Shelley owned, I believe, from the first film.
Yeah. Sarah's played by Mia Kirshner. I remember her from, she played the assassin Mandy in the television shows 24. In a
Yeah,
sort
she
on
kind
and
of
off
went
again role.
into television
Yeah.
after this. She wasn't really a big presence in movies themselves. I think she was in that the L Word for quite a bit with Eric Mabius, coincidentally another Crow
Yeah,
star.
yeah, from the
Um,
third film.
yeah, she kind of made a bigger splash in television than film after this.
Yeah, that little girl is Beverly Mitchell. She'd go on to star in Seventh Heaven, a long-running series.
Oh yeah, it's one of those kind of family soaps.
Yeah, Catherine Hicks was in it as well.
Yeah, which were all very big. Well, a lot of '90s things were like that. Very reminiscent of how Sarah was in the original film, like No Home to Go Home to. Although there technically was, but then you got to put up with Fun Boys crap,
Yeah,
and you got a mum that's high on morphine. I really like this kind of moment here because, again, with the built-in expectation, people know Sarah's background, and it's very she's channeling a lot of Ernie Hudson here from the first film as well, Officer Albert,
yeah, as the
by
mentor character.
yeah, by taking the girl to a roadside diner, kind of like hot food, street food kind of place like that.
Yeah, bringing Sarah back, I think, was a masterstroke. It just made sort of perfect, logical narrative sense. You have someone who has had experience with the whole mythology and how it works, so bringing her back was a terrific idea as an adult.
Yeah, which gives you a good idea of how long things have been
Yeah.
um, since Eric's time.
Yeah, I think canonically I was reading it's been 8 years
Sounds
since the
about right.
first
She
film.
was about 14 or 15 in the first one.
Yeah, around that age.
Yeah, and I
So
love
Peter
this. I think that's the
Judy
first.
gang.
Yeah, yeah, Judah. Who, by the way, I thought I really like Richard Brooks, and he's another one that kind of went into TV after this as well.
Yeah, I was reading a sort of extended interview with him earlier in the week. He seems quite switched on, really intelligent, gave some really insightful answers. Um, yeah, I found it a real pleasure to read through. Uh, talking about what it was like working with Tim Pope, the director, and how, and I think they really captured this. It's just got this ethereal, sort of out of reality kind of look and feel to it.
It does, but it also doesn't feel like there are elements of kind of a '90s grunge thing going on, but it doesn't feel dated like that either.
No, I think that's one of the more endearing things about the whole series, because I rewatched The Crow Salvation not too long ago, and obviously we can tell it was kind of made sort of on the cheap,
I
but
think
it's
that one was
it's
actually marketed as a TV movie as well back in the day, I think.
yeah, it's amazing just how well they hold up. Like the first film holds up really well for a 30 odd year old film. I was just blown away by, and even how well this one holds up on a technical level.
Yeah, I think it stands very strong, and I just love the presence that Judah has in contrast to Top Dollar and his half sister. Like this guy is just a whole different can of worms.
Total
Because Top
freak, isn't
Dollar
he?
was very like, don't get me wrong, like Top Dollar was very like malevolent and all that kind of stuff. His sister was clearly the more evil out of the two of them. Um, but Judah here, like Top Dollar was kind of played up for comedy kicks quite a bit in that first film. Like I don't think intentionally though, but the way Michael Wincott does it felt very comedic. You get no such moments at all with Judah. He is just so dead set the entire time. It's just chilling.
Yeah, I think as well that what these first two films do really good is having really effective female villains. You could always tell with Top Dollar's sister in the first film, she always sort of knew more than she was letting on, kind of implying she's dabbled in the occult and the afterlife. And I love that sort of blink and you miss it look she gives him as Eric absorbs all those bullets, just not impressed at all. And Callie in this film is really unsettling and
I believe she's the one that actually kills Danny, the boy. She's the one that actually does it.
yeah, it's Yeah, the female villains are quite well done in these two, but we'll talk more about Kelly when she gets her turn.
Yeah, I do like this kind of artistic thing that they were doing with Sarah.
Yeah, and the I'll talk more about it. Um,
And keeping in tune with the first one, like because I believe Devil's Night is what Hallows Eve, isn't it?
yeah,
In the first one, and this is kind of channeling that again with like there's quite a lot of I believe it's more of a Mexican thing, like the Day of the Dead festivals
yeah,
and all of
it's an
that.
actual yeah, it's a real celebration.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that being channeled into this, and like the Halloween theme and all of that. So there is a bit of a kind of a sibling relationship to the original film in that regard.
Yeah,
It's pretty much the only thing besides the crow itself to directly transition over from the original film.
yeah. So this the yellow smog was a design motif that was kind of a riff on the first film. So the first film had the constant rain as a visual motif.
Yeah,
Yellow smog would be the sort of consistent atmospheric element for this film, and they wanted to kind of capture the lighting of the sodium vapor lights that you'd see in cities. Although it did have some technical challenges. I was reading yellow light tends to fall off very quickly when because they use real sodium vapor lights, and it takes a lot of special lighting equipment and a really skilled cinematographer to make it work. But they really pulled it off. These shots look spectacular. It just holds up so well.
yeah. There's quite a lot of coloured hue going on. Like there's green, like later in the film when Danny gets buried. There's like a purplish botanical kind of look
Yeah,
to everything. I love, and I've said this a few times in the commentaries that we've done. I love sharp color palettes like that in amongst everything. Like you got like these stone grays here. You've got this kind of dusky turquoise underwater kind of polluted look. Like with all the wreckage underwater and all of that, and then you got the reds of Sarah's apartment. I really like films that have that sharp color contrast between different shots.
yeah.
It's something that just always works with me, and we need to see more of it again.
Yeah, so many films now don't even really bother to use a color palette. So to go back in time to a film like this, and it's just such a rich, saturated color palette. Like very few directors can make it work. This guy's one of them. Cameron uses a color palette really well in his early films as
Yeah,
well.
blues and oranges and
Yeah,
yellows
just
and yeah.
yeah, they just look so rich and deep.
I know this is one shot that a lot of people cite as a plus for the film. Vincent Perez, Ash emerging from the water is one that a lot of people give the thumbs up to.
Yeah,
And I think that's, compared to Eric and Shelley's death, just getting tossed off the pier, no context or anything like that. And one of them's a boy, which is something that's unique to Ash and why I rank him right up there with Eric Draven. I mean, obviously Eric is going to be everyone's favourite, but what makes Ash unique compared to, say, Alex or Eddie, Jimmy, I believe, is the name of the crow in Wicked Prayer.
yeah,
What makes Ash different from the others, and even Eric, is that the life that he lost that he's back to avenge was one of his offspring, which is something
yeah,
that's unique to him, and that's a different kind of pain compared to the other three.
yeah. Well, that's something Goya kind of decided. What's the well, if you want to be morbid, best thing? What's the next worst thing? Then losing a fiance would be losing a child. Yeah, and I like how Ash is very different to Eric. They're very different men and different personalities. That he's not Eric Light. He's a completely different character.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that all four of the films tend to get right. Is that even with the other two kind of lesser sequels of Salvation and Wicked Prayer, they don't try to recapture Eric at all, which is
Yeah,
always going to be a plus in my book, no matter what. Like they do try to be their own thing, and and try to have their own identity. I think making Ash a body shop worker, because you don't want to go down that old rock and roll path, so kind of making him just this kind of Lone Star kind of biker who, you know, has a body shop and all that kind of stuff is already, like, his interests right then and there are completely different from Eric.
Yeah, so the script went through a lot of different revisions and changes and adjustments as they tried to get a bead on the story. They trialed a few different sort of lives for Ash. At one point, they were toying with the idea that he worked for Judah as like a lieutenant or a henchman, but then they realized that, you know, you want a protagonist you can root for, and having a connection with criminals or evildoers wasn't the right way to go about it.
It'd be up there if they tried to make Skank the next Crow and avenge T-Bird. Like, it would be... Yeah. It gets a bit silly, yeah. Well, I'm glad none of the sequels did that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like,
so, but it's good to, you know, they spitball ideas and have sort of discussions about the story, and then, you know, write a draft that sort of pursues that idea. And sometimes it does lead to a dead end or a road they're not interested in going down.
Well, I'm glad that it doesn't make literally the day of shooting before they decide to throw it out. One thing that really stuck out to me giving this a rewatch earlier in the week was the sheer sexual depravity of this city that they're in. It's like none of this would fly in a flick today that gets released theatrically. Like, none of this stuff. Like, just these dens of debauchery all over this city. Like, it's just... Yeah. I mean, that's completely different. Like, nothing like that was in the first film.
Yeah, I quite like this scene as well. Ash doesn't realise he's dead, whereas Eric quietly and quickly came to terms with it. So having Ash refuse to believe it, this is quite interesting.
Well, Eric also came out of his grave as well.
Yeah, very much so.
So it's kind of hard to argue with that, you know, whereas Ash, you know, this is probably on par with a night of heavy drinking.
Yeah, the filmmakers did come up with a backstory, because one thing, the sort of sickly yellowish color, it implies the city is sick, the city is not healthy, the city's not well, and they came up with the idea, so why is everything just so shot to hell? Is it, they don't quite go as outright confirm it's post-apocalyptic, but LA did have a few earthquakes in the 1990s, so they came up with a background of what if the earthquake was a lot stronger and just sort of obliterated the city. And because one of the things, like in the first film has it as well, why do people live there? You know, the city is just so terrible with all this crime and all this sort of stuff. Why would anyone live there? It's because they physically can't leave. Like, they fell through the cracks. They don't have the money or the resources to leave. So they're like they're forsaken. Yeah,
like, look at when Sarah was driving to the pier to see Ash, and when you got those bird's eye view shots from the Crow and all of that, like, cities just jam packed. Like you can see, like, these residential areas just full of rubble and debris. Yeah. Like, these things are, like, it's basically all condemned.
Yeah,
like these places, like, are never gonna be functional again.
Yeah, and the people there who have been left behind can't leave because they simply don't have the means. I thought it was real. None of it makes it into the finished film, but it's really interesting how they took the time to work out why everything is the way it is. It was really interesting, and this is something the film does really well. What I love, moving from an interior scene into an exterior with one smooth motion. It doesn't cut, and they do this a lot throughout the film. They worked really hard on it to dress up exterior locations and merge them with inside ones. Like when the little boy runs out there, that's all just one fluid motion.
One thing, just seeing Ash and the Crow, although he doesn't know the relationship yet to the bird, is that throughout the film, I love the kind of companionship that he develops with the Crow. Like, there's a lot of scenes where he'll be doing something and the Crow will just fly up and perch on his shoulder. Like, there's a lot of dual shots of them together in this film, a lot more
Yeah.
than what there was with Brandon Lee. Like, I know they did it, once after the makeup scene, and when he kills T-Bird, it happens a few times. The Crow is a lot more expressive with Ash in this film than what it was with Eric, and I really like that.
Yeah, and often overlooked feature, a broader aspect of its powers is the Crow vision. The
So
the
yeah, so how does it work? Like the Avatar, you can
can
see
see
what the
through it.
Crow
Yeah,
sees, is how it
yeah,
works.
it's something I never quite picked up on as a kid, but it's obvious in the first film as well as he's stalking Tintin, and it's such a cool idea. These avatars of the Crow can see through the eyes of the actual
And
being.
and they seem to be able to influence the Crow as well to a certain degree, because I kind of got that impression when Eric saw through the eyes of the Crow Top Dollar's sister, and the next thing you know, the Crow pecks her eyes out. I couldn't
Yeah,
help but think maybe Eric kind of like willed it to do that, because he
yeah,
didn't seem at all worried that she could kill it. So maybe that's
yeah.
something that they play with. I don't know if Ash has a moment like that in this film. Um, but yeah, they seem to be able to will the Crow to a certain degree.
Yeah, and let's face it, she may not have been guilty of that, but she was guilty of something.
Yeah, she needed it. She won't do it again.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I guess she didn't see that one coming.
now when I did not see this movie when it first came out. I saw the original one when it first came out, but I did see it in video stores, like on the shelves and that, and the tagline is "Believe in the power of another," so it was obvious from the front cover it was a new character. It wasn't Eric,
Yeah,
but it did have Eric's makeup on, and I often kind of wondered as a kid how exactly he gets it, because the makeup in the first film was a mask he found in his apartment, and someone went into their chat rooms or a thing. I saw this movie as in the City of Angels for the first time as a teenager when I was getting back into The Crow. And one of the first things I asked was, how does he get the makeup? And someone did explain to me, Sarah's back, and she's a tattoo artist working in the city. So and it just all made perfect sense, even though I hadn't seen the film yet, because it kind of because growing up, I sort of frequent the video stores a lot every week, and you'd see it there, but it never really enticed me to pick it up. But I got The Crow, the first film, on DVD, so I had a real interest in finally getting around to the sequel.
yeah.
'Cause
I always
Selection was coming out.
I always had a bit of a fascination for City of Angels, because it was
Yeah,
interesting that it came out and it fully embraced the fact that obviously it wasn't Eric Draven, because they didn't just come out and call it The Crow 2.
yeah,
I love how they gave it a subtitle, and like no mucking around. It's The Crow. It's gonna have the ingredients that you like, but it's totally gonna be its own thing. And
yeah.
what
It's,
would
it's
you?
a,
And just on the Sarah doing the makeup and how all the pieces just kind of fit, I like, that's one thing that runs between all four of the Crow films that I really like, is there's always a different kind of, like, I believe with Alex in Salvation, it's facial scarring because of the way
yeah,
he died.
yeah, peeling the mask off. Yeah,
Yeah, so, and I love how they were Danny's paints that were used for this, and I love how they add their own flair to it. Like, you see what I mean? Like when Sarah's painting the mask on with Danny's paints, like the vertical lines end at the eyebrows, whereas with
yeah,
Eric they come straight out of the ball of the eye.
yeah.
And the
Same thing with
jester
Carol.
smile is kind of broken up, and it looks more like a clown than what the replicant of the mask was that Eric used. I thought giving him, because we saw in the flashbacks how he's playing card games and he does the coin trick. He likes like those kind of magic tricks that impress kids. She sort of gives him, and Sarah has kind of a telekinetic ability of her own to an extent. Like prophets have always been a thing in the Crow films, even in the Brandon Lee film. So giving him the mask of Eric Draven, but painting it so it's like a child jester, like a clown at a birthday party, I thought was
Yeah,
very, very cool.
yeah.
How
It's the
that
same.
does it.
Yeah, it's the same thing but different. Now that as Ash roars out of his on his bike, like a full 12 years before that iconic shot in The Dark Knight with the cape billowing behind Batman on the Batpod. You had that amazing shot of Ash on his bike, and the flare of his coat is like wings behind him.
Yeah, I
It's just
know.
amazing, isn't it? Because I mean, that shot of Batman is one of the most iconic images of Batman in the 21st century, and the fact that this little film that everyone shits on these days did that pretty much exact same effect, and I'd argue it's even more thematically successful here when it's executed, is even better as he roars out.
I love how he's under the underpass as well.
Yeah,
it's really cool, and like the bike chase later with Curve, it does a similar thing. It's really cool.
Yeah, Ash's coat I was reading was based on a priest Cossack with the cuts in it, and yeah, how it flares out like crow's wings is amazing.
And I thought the biker look was really interesting. How they chose that, because like Eric, when he goes back to the apartment, I believe he just puts on his what's the band, Hangman's Noose or something? Is the
Hangman's Joke or something?
Like he literally just dusts off his lead singer spandex, and that's what he wears because why not? Like I think it's awesome that like again that the four of them, they take inspiration from what they were known for in the Land of the Living. He was a rock star of a small band, so why not dress like a punk rocker? And that costume develops over the course of that film, and it's the same thing with Ash here with biker leathers, boots and like leather straps and bracelets and gauntlets and all that kind of stuff. Like it just looks a customer you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah, I think Vincent Perez has the most fun with all these scenes when he finally catches up with them. I think his performance overall is a little bit patchy, but there are some scenes where he absolutely nails it.
I think
he really has fun with it.
Yeah, I think the one that is probably the worst of the lot when it comes to Vincent, I think the Spider Monkey sequence we're about to see coming up, I think that's probably the worst of the lot of them. I think he really dials it back with pretty much all of the others, like with Nemo, Curve, Carly especially. He's really got a good grasp on what he's doing then.
Yeah. And we don't really care about this guy who gets off first. At least Tintin had that scene with Gideon where we kind of get to know him.
I'll close this up for you real good, massa.
Yeah, but this guy, we don't really...
I tell you, fuck, Vincent had a schmick body. Like, I love just how... Like, I love seeing the Crow sleek. Like, he's got, like, this long coat and all of that. Like, you can't tell me, like, when they were looking at developing Neo's costume in The Matrix, that they didn't look to films like this. Like, it just looks fantastic. I love the way Ash looks when he's all done up with the coat. And, like, he uses the coat as a weapon a couple of times in the film as well.
Yeah, like an offensive capability. Well, that's part of the fun about revisiting the series. They're not the best movies in the world, but they're not trying to be. And that's part of the fun about, like, with the Terminator as well. Like they have to hit these basic elements, like with the Crow, how does he get the makeup? And so that was one of the things I always look forward to whenever a new installment would come out. How will they get their clothes and how will they get their makeup? Because it's the same thing with Terminator. They'll get dropped into our day. How do they go about getting ready for the rest of the film? And you can have just so much fun with it. It's fun to wonder about it. It's fun to see it when you watch what they finally when they finally
well that's something I've always wondered about T3. Does the T800 walk around with tearaway stripper pants for the whole film? You can't help but wonder that.
Reese ran around in a what a tramp's pants.
Piss-soaked tramp's shoes, gives you blowjob. Now I was going somewhere with that, and I totally just had a memory lapse. This scene, like when he pulled up on the bike, you were saying we don't really care about Spider Monkey. That's true. Neither does Judah, by the way. But Ash needs to know who the others were, because he has no idea who they were, and he never physically touched them, because one ability that Eric has is, like, when he's going through the jewelry box at Gideon's, he's doing it with his eyes closed, because he'll get the shock when he feels Shelley's ring.
Yeah.
Ash doesn't have those advantages this time around, so he has to interrogate one of them to find out
Yeah.
who the others are. So that's why this has to happen. Because even though Judah was there, he never saw him.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm talking about, like the card trick, like who has the higher value card and all of that. Like he has a very kind of jester act to him,
Yeah.
and I really like that about Ash.
And everything comes full circle, doesn't it? Curve is played by Iggy Pop, and Iggy Pop was one of the inspirations James O'Barr used when coming up with the comic book character Eric's design, like the narrow waist and the
Yeah, just a very sleek frame.
yeah,
Yeah, like just very narrow and all of that. Like not muscular. Like yeah, don't get me wrong. Like the shirtless Vincent Perez scenes, the guy's fucking shredded. You know, like, but you know, yeah, like very like you wouldn't think that though when he's in the full costume though. Like he looks like just a scrawny bloke.
yeah. I've tried to think of other things I've seen him in. I know he's had a prolific career in France and other parts of
But
Europe, but I
he's
do
not
remember
French though, is he? He's something else.
I think he's Swiss, but yeah, educated in France. I was reading about him, and yeah, he was very well established in the European markets. But the only thing I can think I ever saw him in was Queen of the Damned. He played the vampire Marius in it with Stuart Townsend and Aaliyah. I'm trying to think of something else he's been in, but I sort of came up empty.
I love how Curve is kind of like the Ike Clanton of this film. Like he's always there at the crime scenes whenever one of them gets whacked, but he hasn't been killed himself yet. Like he shows up to the warehouse, the drug warehouse where Spider Monkey was. He rocks up at the peeping booth where Nemo was. He rocks up where Carl. Like he's always popping up when one of them gets whacked, but he's always allowed to live until the very end.
Yeah, he's always. It makes you wonder if he got there 5 minutes earlier.
Well, it's a little bit. Well, I suppose because it's Iggy Pop in the mid-90s, like you might as well save him for last. Like if you killed him first, you'd probably piss a few people off.
Yeah, I always found it interesting, like the order they're dispatched, particularly, yeah, in the first and second film. They, yeah, kind of like with horror movies, as you watch them with like a more critical, analytical eye. It's fun to wonder how and why, who gets off. Even a film like Predator, I find it interesting how Dutch's team are dispatched and how the stakes change and the character dynamics change. And yeah, Curve knows something's definitely up. But
well, we just got the shot of the two demons on the forming the crow on the chest, and we just saw all the calling cards form a giant crow on the floor there. So he's already starting to shit himself. Like he knows something's up.
yeah,
Now Sybil here is an interesting one because, like as you were saying earlier about Top Dollar's half sister, like she seems to have dabbled in the occult and all that kind of stuff. That's true, and that's an element that's been in all these films as well. And even Sarah seems to display some kind of prophetic ability as well. And I think Wicked Prayer takes it and just runs with it entirely. Like it goes well into like kind of like psychics and mysticisms, and really goes full on and expands, the kind of the crow mythos into that kind of magical psychic kind of territory.
yeah. The whole film is terrific at executing that kind of point and the feeling. It's just such a dreamlike kind of film that with like visually we're not quite sure, and Richard Brooks kind of articulated this in an interview. This could all, from a certain point of view, it could all just be in Ash's head as he's dying, but from another point of view
I'll have to check out this interview. That's a very interesting way to put it. Yeah, far out.
I was really impressed hearing him discuss, or sort of reading him discuss the film, because it was kind of a profound statement. And from another angle, it's just an urban, dark, gothic fantasy, very much in the vein of the first film. It's they are fascinating films to discuss because they really shouldn't work. I'm sometimes puzzled why they do. They just kind of, yeah, just speak to something really primal for a lot of the audience. And I'm always really fascinated, and I've been chewing over it all week. Like just the fact that they can't be hurt and they can't be killed. With all this online waffle about Mary Sue's and Gary Stews, it's funny no one zeroes in on because he literally cannot die. He's already dead, and he's literally invincible. But no one accuses him of being a Gary Stew. Isn't that the very definition of one?
Yeah, he's literally got God mode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the
Well,
film wouldn't work if that was different. I think if they could be hurt, it just it's like this delicately, like it's just a razor tight, delicate framework. This mythology, and it just pulls it off brilliantly. I've always been fascinated by it. It really shouldn't work, but it just does spectacularly.
see, because that's something that, when they're entertaining the idea of doing a sequel to the Brandon Lee film, and like had Brandon have survived, and they were going to do one with him. If I don't think Brandon Lee would have done a sequel.
Yeah, well, it's funny to think how that would have worked. Yeah, because like we discussed earlier, he was contracted to sequels. It'd be interesting to know, yeah, just what kind of form they would have taken.
I think because when
It's
you
clearly going places.
yeah, like but that's kind of the whole end game of the original film, is that when T-Bird is killed, when Skank is killed, I think Skank's the last one of the group to go. That's it. Eric's job's done. Shelley has been avenged because Top Dollar didn't actually partake in her rape or her murder. So when he goes to rescue Sarah, he's already in overtime. Then he's not supposed to be doing that. So it makes you wonder: did the Crow even need to get injured at all? Top Dollar probably could have just shot Eric in the head, and it would have killed him because he's not avenging. He's in overtime now.
Yeah.
Maybe should have just left the last one alive. So,
Yeah, well, it's funny how the rules work because he indirectly caused them by ordering the gang there. So, yeah, it's so interesting how it works.
yeah, well, and then you've got the sister and all that, and then Tony Todd doing his thing.
Yeah, it might seem like we're discussing the first movie,
Well,
but it's you can't really divorce yourself from it
well,
because Brandon Lee's shocking death sort of influenced a lot of the design and storytelling decisions this movie made.
well, it did, and not only that, but a lot of people who tend to discuss City of Angels talk about how shit it is compared to the first one, but I think they're pretty on par with each other for the most part.
Yeah, it's definitely a better rated film than it was back in the day. I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, some people have that credit where it's due. A lot like the fandom kind of temperature of City of Angels has changed quite a bit in recent years. I will give it that. And not just this, it was because of editing or anything like that. No, I think people just genuinely do like it.
Yeah, well, there's lots of certainly on a technical level, that's very good. Yeah, I think some of the performances, as I sort of mentioned, are a bit patchy. As
Thomas Jane trying to jerk off.
so that was Nemo, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're up to Nemo now.
Yeah,
This is his thing.
yeah, he's not wasting any time, Ash.
Well, we all do it. Nemo just got caught by Ash.
Yeah, we've all been there. Okay, fair enough. Hardly any of us. All right, no one at all.
Turn it up, you two. Yeah, Thomas Jane, interesting guy himself. Like the '04 Punisher film, Deep Blue Sea was his follow-up to this, I think. To cap off the '90s, he's a pretty interesting dude himself.
Yeah, it's hard to believe he's been around for that long. Yeah, I do remember the 2000. I remember both of their movies. I like them a lot. Yeah, I actually watched the '04 Punisher not too long ago.
I'll say, I don't know if you've seen the Dirty Laundry short film where he reprises Frank Castle.
No, I haven't got around
with
to
Ron
that.
Perlman, but even before that came out, I was thinking to myself, I wouldn't mind giving Tommy Jane another shot at that because he definitely looks the part these days. And doing the crow nursery rhyme thing here, like a lot of it's kind of the cherry on top of the jester motif that Ash has. A lot of his killings involve kind of childlike things about it. Like he quotes Big Black Bird to Carly. He's doing the nursery rhyme one crow, two crows now while he's just pounding ass in this peep booth. Like, it just seems to be, like, heavily inspired by the fact that he has lost a child.
Yeah.
So he's treating, like, he's using, like, nursery rhymes and things like that just to totally freak these people out. And I love that about Ash. Like, it's totally his intention to make them feel every bit of it.
Yeah. And again, it's another scene where he starts outside and walks inside, and the scene continues. It's quite hard to do, and they would have went to a lot of time and effort to build and construct the outside location with the interior set. It's really skillfully done in this film. And I also like their attention to detail. Like, look how well this set here is dressed. It's just just the attention to detail is phenomenal.
I want to say one thing. When we were seeing Ash there gouge out Nemo's eyes, I love the consistency in Ash's makeup, because at no point do the lines change. Like, he has a broken smile line on his left cheek, on the left side of his face, and that stays there throughout the entire film. Like, I love it when they keep the consistency of that. Like when you look at the Brandon Lee makeup, for example, I think the right eye, the crow streaks on the right eye are bigger than the left eye.
Yeah, okay.
And I just love it when they keep those details going throughout the whole shoot.
Yeah, it would be a pretty fun job. I forget what the actual title of that job is, but it is someone's job to ensure continuity like that between each scene. It would be a pretty fun job to have. Like, if a guy's tie is not quite.
I'm not wearing a tie at all.
Yeah, it's but if it's loose just a little bit, it's their job to make sure it's exactly right for when the next scene comes. It'd be a pretty cool job to have, wouldn't it?
And I love, again, going back to the kind of Ike Clanton thing, like, Curve is, like, he gets a phone call from Ash that he puts the only reason the origami's there is just to freak him out. It's kind of like he's shitposting Curve before the internet was a thing.
Yeah. In fact, that was funny. It's a good point you made there. Just sort of revisiting sort of all the kind of cast and crew talk about, what it was like to film this movie, because the internet did exist back then, but it was still kind of in its infancy. And yeah, he's, like you said, he's shit posting.
Like, he's calling Curve from a phone booth right outside. Oh, it's brilliant. Like, yeah. Can you handle that, Blondie? He might as well have said that.
Yeah, it's prehistoric shit posting.
I've always loved this shot of the walking down the street here, like, with the arms folded, like, because he almost looks like a priest, how the waist kind of flares out, and he's walking into a kind of church now, just to see what the go is. And I really like this scene where he talks to the father in here.
Yeah.
And there's been, like, nothing to say that Ash was religious or anything prior to this, or anything like that. It's just kind of just seems fitting for what he's doing right now. And talking about Devil's Night and all of that, there's quite a lot, particularly with Spider Monkey and a few other characters later. A lot of them take moments to start, like, their dialogue goes entirely into Spanish. There's a lot of that happens here, which makes me think, were they going to flat out do this in Mexico, maybe, in the screenplay stages of this? Because there's a lot of Spanish stuff in the film.
Yeah. Well, what's your runtime, just quickly? I think I might be a little bit ahead of you by a minute or two.
I'm at 44:08 right now.
Okay.
My overall is 1:30. 1 hour and 30 is what I've got.
Okay. Yeah, I'm slightly out of sync with you. That's okay. Just let me know when you're at Judah's Fortress, and I'll jump back in.
Yeah, we're just talking.
It's the very next scene, yeah.
Yeah. So Ash is I really like this kind of beat, and I believe this is where he lays Sarah to rest later.
Yeah, yeah,
as
that's the
well.
scene I was talking about. Look how wonderful that set is dressed in the church. It's fantastic.
I
Look at
love
the
this.
detail.
Yeah, I love this beat when he talks to the girl.
Yeah,
Um,
Beverly Mitchell's back.
because this is kind of his moment of can't rain all the time, and I love that eye shot of Vincent Perez there because,
Yeah,
yeah, with the because unlike the heavy, thick crow stripe from the eyes that Brandon Lee had, I love these really thin kind of hairline streaks for the black
yeah,
on Ash. I really love that. It's almost like kind of like a Tears of a Clown kind of a look.
yeah,
I gotta be honest, it's probably gonna be like blasphemous and how dare you and all this kind of stuff, but I prefer the makeup that Perez has over the original film. Not that I'm not saying it's shit, I'm just saying I like this kind of look better in relation to Ash than what I did with Eric. Like
yeah,
there's something about it that just works with me. Like I love how the top lines end at the eyebrows, and the top eyelid is still white, whereas with Eric it was just that he had the panda eyes.
yeah,
And I think with Alex, he has two vertical rows that meet the smile line on his.
yeah. So it's because he's
We're at Judah's thing now, if you want to
yeah.
kick off
Okay, I'll
again.
dive back in. I believe I've just got the theatrical cut. My runtime's 1 hour and 25. When it came out on home video, I believe the director's cut. Yeah, Tim Pope did put a few minutes of footage back
Oh,
in.
okay, so there must have been one. Well, this is just the one that I got that came up. It didn't say it was extended or anything like that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Um,
It's still, I mean, it's
well,
not like
I don't even know what's been added into it. So like I couldn't even tell you what was new or what wasn't because it's been so long since I've actually seen it. So there was some truth to the talk. Oh, well, I mean, can you really say 5 minutes is an extended cut, people? Like,
No, I don't think you can.
no, like, in my mind, the definition of an extended cut is Fellowship of the Ring, where it
Yeah.
adds like another 2.5 hours to the. That's an extended cut. When you add in a couple of pissant scenes, that's not an extended cut. Oh, you got to see the ultimate edition of Batman v Super. No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah, so I really like this with Judah here. Now, apparently he's basically Richard Brooks with Judah. The ultimate kind of sacrificial lamb in the editing was his character the most. Because there's a lot, like why does he have this kind of spiritual belief in what Sybil says? A lot of the things that he say, like a lot of the lines that he has in the film, it's almost like they're referencing things that the audience should already know, but we don't.
Yeah, I believe his ultimate goal is to find a way to cheat death. And he sees Ash's arrival as a means. He finally has the means to do it. I think that's what like the cut of his jib is.
Yeah, all right.
But it was. I'll talk a little bit more about it in their final confrontation because, believe it or not, there was a plan to bring back Top Dollar.
Yeah, and I heard something fucking outrageous, like Tony Todd was meant to rock up, revealed to still be alive.
Yeah, there was lots of ideas that they did explore, but thankfully never came to fruition.
I love this conversation between the curtains, by the way. Between
Yeah.
Sarah and Ash, and I love the shots of Ash. Like the makeup is just so good. You can't not show it off. You know, like it's awesome. Hot Toys Ash pre-order, mate. Send me the link. I'll pick it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and it's really breaking free now of the first film's narrative. It's a twin sort of narrative now. You got the beginnings of this sort of doomed romance while he's still avenging his son. It's really interesting. You really do feel for these two characters because it's doomed no matter what.
Because if he does stay, eventually she's gonna die, like no matter what. Whereas he'll be doomed to walk forever. So
Yeah.
you're kind of applying a band-aid to the pain you've already got. You kind of just need to front up and take it as it is.
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, channeling a bit of Uncle Brian, Ash, she's the best you'll get ever.
Yeah, nah, cash your chips, mate.
Yeah, I'd walk the earth for all eternity as well, probably.
Yeah. Give us. Yeah, is it you got a girlfriend? Yeah, no offense, I'm amazed. Yeah. Give us a look at her. Fuck me dead. She's gorgeous, mate. If that was my Sheila, I wouldn't leave her side. You're getting married, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Talk about the magic of the movies. Judah's Lair, that's a real building, believe it or not, that
Fucking
they've
hell.
dressed up to be this something out of Mordor.
Please tell me that it's something like a daycare center or something. It's something very peaceful and fun-loving and kid-friendly in real life. They turn it into this fucking sexual deprived crack den for a movie, because that's pretty common. That like that, like
Yeah,
they'll convert like a hospital wing or something into like a dungeon.
yeah, it's the magic of the movies. It's unbelievable. I've seen a picture of the real building, and to make it look so sinister and foreboding the way they do is really impressive. A lot of the exteriors they found in pretty much their first day of scouting, believe it or not. They found the tattoo parlor, the peep show, Judah's building, the exterior of Sarah's apartment, the tunnel to the river. All of that they locked in on pretty much their first day.
Yeah, Ash's shot would have been another one.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like the project started off with such promise. Like Goya had written a script that they were all excited. They secured, a pretty decent cast. Everyone had such high hopes. It's just a shame it never quite soars the way it should.
I wonder if they sat on it for another year or two
Yeah, that could
before
have
doing
helped.
it,
Yeah.
because it was pretty, like, it was about 18 months after the first one that this was kind of fast tracked and all. And the first one wasn't some massive success. Like, it did well enough to warrant a sequel.
Yeah,
Like it.
the yeah it yeah, relative to what it was pretty good. Although interestingly enough, it never caught on in Asia. It did well in Europe. It did well in America, and and it was really critically well received. But it never really ignited any Asian markets, which even Ed Pressman kind of reflected on later. He doesn't really understand why. They were hoping for a bigger splash with this movie. But again, it didn't quite take. So yeah, that was really interesting. But it wasn't. But it's all relative. It wasn't like a bazillion-dollar kind of hit, but relative to its budget, it did do pretty well. There was a lot of
It would have made it would have it would it was probably one of those films that would have made much more of a killing in home release than what it did theatrically, especially after the incident. Like the VHS rentals for The Crow would have been up the arse.
yeah, it was hugely popular when it came out on home video.
I
It's
suppose.
rude.
Yeah.
No, you go on.
Oh well, I was gonna say, just talking about that, like the like a lot of people talk about the '94 Crow, and it's this masterpiece. It's this, that, and the other, and it's a fantastic film. It's a very high caliber film. You're not wrong in saying those things, but it's labeled as a cult film, and I just wanted to go into that real quick because I would put City of Angels in that boat as well. Like cult films, like I think a lot of fandoms misinterpret that meaning quite a lot. Like, if it's a cult film, therefore it's great. Like, a bad movie can have a cult following.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems to be hijacked these days. Oh, it's got a cult following, therefore it's awesome, and people just didn't know any better or anything like that. I don't believe that. There just seems to be this, if it has a cult following, it's good. Like, no, that's not really how that works.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's now considered a cult classic. And like some of the
You've
biggest
been
mainstream
ripping it to
hits-
fucking shreds for 30 years. 3 decades, mate.
Yeah, like some of the biggest mainstream movies ever are like,
Yeah.
it became a cult classic. What?
Yeah, a cult classic.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or there'll be some remastered trailer and it'll say something like, the film that sparked a fandom. Like, what? Get bent.
Yeah. So they, the execution scene, believe it or not, was their first day of filming. They really jumped in the deep end, didn't they? A very intense, dark scene. And Graham Revell did the score for this one and the first film, and that sort of beautiful melody now.
It's only used once in the film, and it's when he goes to retrieve Danny's body, which is coming up. Yeah. I want to point out, I love how Carly is using a nursery rhyme when she kills Danny there, and Ash does the same rhyme back to her when he whacks her next. Really cool stuff. But I actually think my favourite piece of music in the first two Crow films is actually when Sarah's doing Ash's makeup. That's my favourite track out of the two of them. Don't get me wrong, I know the Can't Rain All the Time track is, you know, it's the force theme of these films. Like, what else needs to be said about that? I just really appreciate that kind of the makeup theme with Sarah and Ash. There's just something about that soft, subtle kind of religious choir.
Yeah, he's very underrated as a composer, Graham Revell. I always enjoyed as well the choir that kicks in when T-Bird is about to be killed.
Yeah.
I think it plays in one of the earlier trailers as well, but it's so rare for a film where the soundtrack, the songs used, as well as the instrumental orchestral score works so well together. The music really drives these films. Interestingly enough, it's one of the reasons, so you've probably heard the famous sort of person who was considered for the role of Ash.
Is it what, John Bon Jovi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his baggage, well, baggage isn't the right word, but his whole reputation and history as a rocker sort of precedes him. He was quite, the producers and that were keen on him. He was a big fan of the first film. He liked, much like what attracted Vincent Perez to the role, he was very keen that it was a brand new character and that kind of stuff, but he just had too much baggage as a rock star. And
it would keep taking you out of the film. Like, you can't do that. It's like when David Bowie rocks up as an FBI agent in Fire Walk With Me. Like, what the fuck is he doing there? Like, oh, well, they were fans of the show. So? Like, why are they there? I love this little... And this is what I'm talking about. He checks the paint still wet, and the crow just perches on his shoulder. I love that. I love that little bit when the crow just perches on his shoulder when he's kneeling. I suppose this is probably the time to talk about Thuy. After leaving Power Rangers, I think this was the first big thing that she did, and she might have had a few TV roles here and there as well at the time.
Yeah, I think this was her first film. She left Power Rangers to pursue a more serious acting career.
Damn, she had the chops for it, because she's terrifying in this movie. Like,
it is such a ballsy move to go. Although this isn't, I think she would have felt pretty secure and, sensible doing it, because this is like an R-rated film. So I don't think she was ever worried about, audiences not sort of taken or sort of like.
And you got to remember, she departed from the show for about 2 years now. Like, she tapped out in 94, I believe. And this is 96, so she was pretty well removed at that point.
Yeah, I mean, she'll always be Trini. But it is good that we did see her in, a couple of other things before she, tragically passed.
It's awesome that she gets this fight, which it's basically the only real fight in the film, isn't it?
Yeah, I just love the way they're set, again, is put together. Because you get so much of, like you see the art books and the reference materials and the paints and the sculptures.
Paint supplies everywhere. Like, there's canvases are half done and all
isn't
of this.
It? Again, it's just another wonderfully dressed set. It does really feel like it's Sarah's own personal space. It's so brilliant. It's it really deserves a lot more credit on a technical level, this film.
I always love the kind of head tilt like an owl that Vincent Perez does there. It's really cool. Yeah, and then he completes the nursery rhyme that she was doing to Danny at the pier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd write it up under graffiti.
Oof.
Like one thing with Ash though, I love the brown hair. Like whereas Eric Draven had just this dark raven black hair. Like I love the contrast of the browns and the maroons that he's wearing, as opposed
Yeah.
to the brown hair, the maroon vest. It's not jet black; it's like a real dusty black. Like
Yeah, and
there's
it's
a lot
quite
of high contrast with Ash's like ensemble.
yeah, and it's quite deliberate. The costume designer, did kind of discuss that they wanted to mimic real crow's feathers. So there's the red and the greens and the purple, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's such a cool, well designed motif. So by this point, Curve's the only one left, right?
I believe so, not including Judah. I was waiting for Curve to walk into this den and just go, Huntington Hills High, kiss my ass. Well, you got to remember, like, Sybil had that line to him earlier going, you can't stop him with knives or guns. You're fucked no matter what you do. And that's what I mean as well. Like, the Crow is... Like, he has evolved quite a bit since that original comic. A lot of people describe him as an anti-hero. I suppose that really... I'm getting those vibes a lot from this remake that's coming out. Whereas just about every other crack in the previous 4 films, no, I can totally get on board with whoever the Crow avatar is. They seem like well-to-do, wrong place, wrong time. Everyone at some point can kind of get behind that. I'm not a big fan of anti-heroes in general. Like, I
Yeah.
suppose they label the Crow as that because the Crow does kill, but, well, like, what else is he supposed to do? you know?
Yeah, but it gets the balance like really well done because the antagonists are so irredeemable. You, it really does get away with it. There's no redeeming quality about any of the gang in the first film or the gang in this film.
Yeah, no, there's not.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why it does work when it shouldn't work. If they were redeemable, the whole thing falls apart. If the Crow avatar can be hurt, the whole thing falls apart. The whole, yeah, the
It's
like
an avenging angel in a way, isn't it?
it is, yeah, and yeah, it's an avenging angel. They have no arc. They're just this vengeful spirit that they cannot rest until they've delivered justice to the people who've wronged them.
I think it's the eternal line of the entire Crow franchise coming up here with fuck you, bird dick. This is one I remember hearing as a kid, and it's just always stuck with me. Ever since, yeah. Iggy Pop should have got the Oscar for that. Yeah, and this bike chase, I love this. Because one of my favourite kind of beats with Ash in this, I love a lot with Ash, but one of my favourite moments is when he goes into the underpass when Curve is at the flooded the kind of drawbridge thing, and Ash is just casually walking through it, and you can hear the footsteps like clicking as he's walking up, and like he hasn't even got the shotgun ready yet because Curve is like totally cornered. I just love the walking and the echoing of the footsteps. Like, no, I don't need to be stealthy or nothing, mate. Like, it's just so cool. I love that one long take of Ash just walking through the tunnel.
Yeah, the addition of the bike is great, and it's something that the uh, Eric kind of retroactively repossesses in the Crow Stairway to Heaven. Eric has a bike in it when he's played by Mark Dacascos.
Who I believe was a front rower for the actual film back in the day.
Yeah, I do remember reading Mark Dacascos auditioned for the role of Ash for this film. He's someone gave him was probably good advice in hindsight. You look too much like Brandon Lee, and they'll hate you for it.
Yeah,
Maybe
you're a bit of a try hard.
But I think he does a pretty good job in the television series because it's a very different sort of tone.
Eric.
And I think enough time had passed where it wouldn't be so sort of stark.
Because that was like 98, 99, wasn't it? Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, or even maybe a little bit later.
Like, and it's funny how everyone was freaking out about there being a female crow, yet we've already had one in Stairway to Heaven with Talon.
Yeah, and that was one of James O'Barr's ideas for this sequel. He would have liked to have seen a female uh, spirit be resurrected. There were some commercial realities, though. Like it's sort of been proven. I don't necessarily like it or agree with it, but audiences don't really respond to female-led action films. I know there's some exceptions like Aliens and things like that, but and it's sort of mostly true largely to this day. 30 odd years later.
Yeah.
Led action films just don't resonate with audiences. So it's an intriguing idea, but there's some commercial realities that the producers need to accept.
Yeah, it's the same reason why I don't think a Perfect Dark movie would fly, because it's just James Bond without nuts. It's like, I get the idea. Joanna's a very popular character and all of that. I just don't think the climate's right for it.
Yeah, it probably will struggle. It's sad but true.
I love that shot when Ash was on the bike and the crow just swoops down and pitches up on the shoulder. Like, that's what I meant. Like, the crow's very expressive with Ash in this compared to Eric, and I really like that. Ironically, I believe Ash is the only one whose crow is killed. I don't think Alex loses his, and I can't remember what happens in Wicked Prayer. I've ever only seen it the once. A good bit of CG work here with Ash walking through the fire. I really like that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting scene comparing it to the first film. He has this kind of weird moment of tenderness with Curve. It's such an interesting scene to watch. One of the things I found really interesting about the first film when he dispatches T-Bird is Eric doesn't say a word. And it's interesting because T-Bird's the only one who recognizes him, and Eric doesn't say a word. What more needs to be said?
Yeah,
as he
because it makes for a much more chilling kind of moment. And
the others, and it sort of gives you an insight into just what violent, thuggish lives they led. They honestly don't recognize him.
Yeah, well, they probably that probably wasn't the only couple they raped and murdered that night, mate.
Yeah,
the terrible story of it is.
That's what I mean. They're irredeemable. They're total monsters turned up to 11.
You can see the broken smile line on Ash's cheek there. That stays throughout the entire film, and I fucking love it. I love the broken smile on the left side of the face. It's so cool. Yeah, exactly. And the same deal with these. Like, who knows how many kids they mowed down that night, It's, like, I know this gets flung around quite a bit. It wouldn't get made today. I still like to think something like City of Angels would. There's just no way they would have a kid get killed. There's certain... Like, the film would still come out, just not the way that you... Not the way that it did back then, and I think this is a film that falls into that trap.
It probably wouldn't be as confronting as... I suspect it would be filmed in a way that it's implied what happened. It certainly would be face and confronting the way this film is, because it's a really vile scene. Even as a teenager, it still kind of shook me up. Sort of earlier this week watching it, there's some really dark stuff in this film.
Yeah, there is. Like the first one has a kind of a bleak atmosphere, but like the hopelessness of the landscape in this, and young children, all of that, like the innocence of youth, like there's nothing quite like that, and to see it just get stomped out like that by being in the wrong place at the wrong time and not shying away from it either. Like after the initial credits, like the title cards of this film, you see Danny and Ash's bodies just get chucked off the pier. Like that's how this film opens. Like it doesn't pull any punches at all. Good lord.
Yeah.
But having said that, though, I don't mind films doing things like that. Like if it's pushing our story forward and giving weight to our characters. When it's just done off the cusp, for a bit of shock value.
shock.
That's when it rubs me up the wrong way. Like, if they just had some random kid get murdered in a Superman film, like, I'd be pissed off. Like, like, you did that for no other reason than you could. No. Like, I don't mind it when it's in a film such as this, but when they, you get what I mean.
Yeah, when it's done for shock value, it's really comes off looking really tacky and cheap.
I was going to make a mention of this when we first saw Judah drug his own man and OD him. That was Judah's painted nails. You know, like, it's just a weird kind of character moment. His nails are manicured and painted and stuff like that. It's, very interesting that how they did that to him.
Yeah, well, his whole design, even with his lair, it's another thing that it's almost like a separate reality from the world outside in this film. It's like a reality within a reality.
It reminds me of Judah's lair and all of that. Ash never steps foot inside of it. He tries to scale it, but the fight happens outside. Yeah. It reminds me of that kind of medieval sci-fi kind of Quake fusion, you know? It reminds me of Quake. Like, you got this purple stormy sky around Judah's tower and all this kind of... it looks very Quake-esque, which came out the same year.
Yeah, it's really kind of cementing just this diseased urban landscape.
How much time do you think has passed since Ash has returned? Because the festival's on now.
Yeah, I'm never quite sure. I kind of wondered about this when I first saw it. It could range from a year to a night, because I got the impression watching it on and off over the years, it seems like the same night, but then why wouldn't they recognize him? It's kind of, again, I think it lends itself to that sort of dreamlike quality the director was going for, where time is almost immaterial.
Like when he's talking to Sarah through the curtains, and then he has that moment where he tells her, I can't do this, I need to finish what I started. There could very well have been like 10 years between that. Between those two interactions with Sarah. And I was going to ask the question then, how long do you think? But no, it's good that you said that, because I was kind of under the same impression. Yeah, here we go. Sybil, who I don't believe she dies in this film.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I believe now's probably a good time to unpack the top dollar returning thing. So Judah was going to morph into top dollar.
Yeah, they had a couple. Again, it's another abandoned idea. And this has been true with the subsequent films as well, because like even after this film, I think Rob Zombie was attached to doing a Crow picture, and there was a rapper, I think his name is DMX, was attached to another project. And even Goya mentions it when discussing this film, when they decided that the bird is going to be the Avatar and we're going to have standalone protagonists. They talked about, doing one in the far future, doing one in Victorian era England. I believe some of the subsequent comic book series have sort of touched on some of these, and there's one set during World War II and things like that. So yeah, the script went through a lot of different kind of variations, and one of them was bringing Top Dollar back. They also toyed with the idea of an anti-Crow, where like a hawk or something brings back evildoers, which I think popped up in the Stairway to Heaven television series.
So like a redeemer to the Spawn. They were going to do that.
Yeah, where Eric summons like this murderer from hell, and he's like an anti-Crow. So yeah, and because also Michael Wincott gave such a, just blew everyone away with his take on the character. They were keen to maybe getting back. So yeah, this ritual that Judah performs with the, I forget the particulars 100%, but he summons the kind of spirit of Top Dollar, and Top Dollar possesses him, and it was David Goyer actually did write script for it, actually exploring that idea. But this is quite interesting because it's kind of a paradoxical rule. I've heard this rule from guys like Jim Cameron, where they say the like a true sequel shouldn't you shouldn't have to rely on the first film, as in you shouldn't rely on having seen the first film to enjoy the second one, which sounds paradoxical. Like the first part of that sentence negates the second part of the sentence. But yeah, and he's delivered arguably too.
It's like what does old mate say? We have to forget the past by constantly dwelling in the past.
Yeah.
So, well, this is uncharted territory now compared to the first one. Is that Eric's Crow was wounded but not killed, whereas Ash's was flat out killed. So they don't return to the land of the dead, even though the first film said it severs his connection. Well, it severs it to immortality, but it doesn't actually instantly kill Ash again. And this kind of thing here, like with the ingesting of the blood and all this kind of jazz going on here, I think this is something the sequels probably should have done a bit more of. I do love how he does his own kind of facial marks.
Yeah.
To kind of really embrace the embodiment of what he's about to do. But adding into that...
Sorry. I was just going to quickly touch up on the top dollar idea. I think it was also related to the version of the story where Ash works as one of Judah's lieutenants. So it transpires that Judah has inherited Top Dollar's criminal empire.
Well, that would mean that this is set in Detroit then, wouldn't it? Wasn't that where the first one was?
Yeah, unless Top Dollar's empire had a bit more reach than just that city.
Yeah. Well, you never know, because it keeps you, like, looking inwards, which is what a lot of films, I think, need to do a bit more of. I love always being looking inwards. It's a rule I remember Bob Ford talking about with Beast Wars. You know, we didn't have the biggest budget, so we have to keep people looking inwards so they don't realise how small the world is. You know, so it's a similar deal here. Yeah, alright, so he's got his Sunday best on here. Now, this ending, like this confrontation here, I've heard so many different versions about this. How this whole thing plays out. Yeah, the drinking of the blood and all that kind of thing. You know, I love when they add new elements to the Crow kind of mythos and legend, and you know, the avatar of it, and like what Ash does to get rid of Judah here, and the transition of power, and like I love when they add kind of layers to that, even though some of them do get a bit outlandish. But I mean, when you're talking about bringing people back from the dead, how much more crazier can you get? That line there, "Go to hell," I've already been there, and I must confess I love what I saw. I remember hearing something that one of Judah's driving things is that he was in an accident or something, and he died for a couple of seconds, and he saw hell in an afterlife. And when he was resuscitated, that's kind of what that line there is harkening back to. I've heard a few things about a script saying that, and that's why Judah has this kind of obsession with the Crow and immortality and stuff like that, because he actually has seen the afterlife of hell.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember reading that. That was sort of some of the motivations for the character. Yeah, and that's why he's obsessed with conquering death.
Yeah, it would have been interesting, especially in this film. There's a lot of like when he was killing the Crow, Ash is essentially crucified. He gets the stigmata on his hands. There's a lot of... It's very heavy on its religion in this one. I know the first one had it too, but not like this.
Yeah, and just with some of his sort of statements throughout the film, he does kind of let on the fact that he's been to hell. And not just in that sort of glib way that he said it with Ash a minute ago, just like with a look or a blink, talking to his henchmen and with his lady offsider, that he's sort of, he's been through hell and he's trying to get to heaven in the opposite way that most people are. It's a really sort of interesting aspect of his character.
Uh, what did you think about killing off Sarah here?
Uh, for, like I quite like Sarah's character. I'm not a big fan of killing off characters I like, but I don't think they had any other choice. It's it yeah, it really shits me when she died because it seems
It does. It really takes me out of the film a little bit when it happens.
yeah, in a lot of ways she is the heart and soul of these two films because she's the narrator. She's relating these stories to us. So I thought, yeah, I've never quite agreed with it because it doesn't seem because they wanted to have the tragic sort of ending for Ash. He's avenged his son, but this love story can never really exist. So, I mean, yeah, the murder of crows. How cool is that?
Yeah, I actually love this pain is my power moment because I remember another tagline being "Love is stronger than death,"
Yeah,
and yeah, again, I love it when they add these kind of things to the power set of the crow,
yeah,
and because like the spiritual, like, how do we know that all the like this murder of crows that take Judah now? How do we know they all haven't got their own avatars? You know,
yeah,
we don't know, and they're all just as pissed off with Judah as you know Ash is.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it when they add these little flares and yeah, oh, it's fan fiction. No, they wouldn't have done this. Jesus Christ, guys! Like, it's a Crow sequel, and you're worried about ideas being too outlandish. Oh my god! You know, yeah. This always kind of and the inverted cross on the forehead. And this is, I believe, this is the painting that she's been working on for the whole film.
Yeah, like that kind of religious, kind of allegorical sort of painting that they were going for.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
all the
Because
blood
it was
splatter.
established, yeah, it was established he does have these visions and dreams that are kind of prophetic in nature.
Yeah, so she probably knew that she was going to go out. I do love how he wraps her up in the jacket. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And everyone just kind of standing there.
So he's doomed to wander the earth forever.
Yeah, I think with a movie this bleak, opening up with the execution of a child, I am kind of glad that we never saw that ending. Because it sounds like that's the kind of ending that wants me to go and just drink. Is you know, like you can't kick me when I'm down like that, guys. Come on. But also this also incentivizes him to return even more so now. Like he
Yeah.
answers the girl, "I'm going to a better place." Well, Sarah's now in that place too. You
Yeah.
know, like I remember in Batman and Robin, which came out the year after this, there's a good line from Michael Gough's Alfred to George Clooney and that. And it's when he says, I like, you know, everything I've done, everything I'm capable of doing, I can't even save you. Alfred says, "There is no defeat in death, Master Bruce." And it's quite an interesting quote there. Like, when does death mean you lose? You know, like that's yeah. I kind of missed when that became the thing. So that kind of moving on to something else, and you know, the challenge of living is now someone else's to deal with. Like there is no defeat in death. I thought that was a very good line, and it reminds me a lot of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Sarah needs to go back to the tattoo parlor and get harassed by another transvestite. Um, yeah. So the Crow holding the engagement ring again. What was your take there on that? It's pretty interesting that it, like, because it kind of implies that it was Eric's crow, doesn't it?
Yeah, quite possibly. And it's got that sort of perfect circle now. He got it from Sarah. It's a reminder and a memento for her. And that's how the story began. Like in the first film, I mean, the ring is what really kicks that plot off and running. And yeah, to see it, it's now that goes through Sarah onto a person she loved.
Yeah, true. No, I reckon this is not a bad shake at all. This, like the final product as it is, I think it's pretty solid on its own. It does everything I think a good 90-minute long film should do.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's something as well. Like it's such a lean, mean running time. I love it.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, oh well, that super extended cut nearly killed me with 5 extra minutes.
Yeah,
Um, you know, no, yeah, I really enjoy City of Angels. I think it's without a doubt it's the best of the sequels, and not because it was the first one. I still have a bit of an affinity for Salvation, but you know, the instant reply to that is always, "Oh yeah, but the first one though." No one's arguing the status of the first one.
yeah,
You're the one that keeps bringing it up.
yeah. I watched Salvation a little while ago, and yeah, Eric Mabius again, much like Perez, he's very patchy in it. But I think as the longer that third film goes on, the better and more comfortable he gets in it. He's very patchy at the start, but he does warm to it and have a bit of fun with it. And it's something that sort of Brandon Lee understood, and he does sort of mention that in his final interviews. Like the idea, you can have a little bit of fun with it, and he references that scene after the shootout at Top Dollar's lair, and he does the sort of Looney Tunes tap dance
Yeah.
as he's getting away from the cops. Like he cannot die and he cannot be hurt. Like as if you would sort of put your hands up or just sort of bolt normally out of the room. No, you'd have a little bit of fun with it. And you do sort of see glimpses of that with the later ones. I haven't seen Wicked Prayer since it first came out, but I do have a copy of the DVD that came up that arrived a couple of weeks ago, so I will get around to revisiting that. But yeah, they won't. But they had such an impossible legacy to live up to, even to this very day. I mean, we're still sort of feeling the ripple effects in show business of Brandon Lee's tragic death. That it's certainly influenced so much of this film in particular that we just watched, but you know the later installments as well. He just cast such an enormous shadow because he just gave such an incredible performance. And yeah, there's no like I think any discussion of The Crow won't get too far.
Without bringing up
So
Brandon Lee at some
yeah,
point.
it's he was such a
Yeah, no, I totally agree on Brandon Lee.
force
Yeah,
behind it. I always just assumed that that project was all him and sort of intrigued him to want to pursue it. But no, he loved the comic. He could see enormous sort of potential for film in it, and he was a real driving force behind it. As sad as it is, he literally gave the performance of a lifetime
yeah.
for it.
Well, I wouldn't say anyone in this sort of gave it their all and more. I do think it would have been pretty fun to have been involved in making a film like this. I think everyone, was hired to do a job, and they all did just that. I think it was very. I wouldn't say it was a safe by the numbers sequel. I think it did everything a sequel needs to do.
Yeah, it was
Especially an
quite bold.
anthology sequel. I think all the ingredients are there, and I think it is a very solid film of its own. Like if you were to look at this as an action hero movie, completely devoid of Brandon Lee, I think a lot of people like let's not call it The Crow, let's call it The Jester instead.
Yeah,
Everyone would be praising this film. Yeah.
yeah. It's a classic kind of case of like they had the right idea, but just couldn't quite pull it off. Because yeah, every idea they had, every approach they had was the right one. Yeah, like Eric's story is done. We're not going to recast the role. It's all new material, an all new original story, which is what fans say they want. um, but yeah, it's a shame it never quite got the uh, reaction or success it needed to. Because yeah, on a lot of levels, it really holds up today, and some of the elements were ahead of their time. It's a really interesting movie. and it's been really fun to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think this one is the one where the conversation is to be had about the Crow sequel, because what can you really add to that first one? But when you look at the contrast between this one and the first one, this is literally everything what fans are asking for in a sequel at this day and age. Yet when they do get it, they don't warm up to it. So, they want different but the same. Jim Cameron once said, and
Yeah, it's such a paradoxical rule again. Yeah, they. How on earth can you deliver sequels when the rules are fans want the same thing but different, and you don't have to have seen the first film to enjoy the second one?
well, there's been a few exceptions to the rule. Maybe Cameron's got like a magical wand that he waves when it comes to doing sequels, but I
Well,
really enjoyed this one. I think this is a solid film in and of itself, totally devoid of the first one. I really enjoy City of Angels.
yeah,